All right.
Okay, yeah. An indicator of a record going on right now, so it looks like we're good.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll just get started again. Like I said, I do just want to thank you for taking the time to do this. It is much appreciated. Um, but yeah, so we'll just get started with the first question. Um, so, what is it that made you want to get into acting and voice acting and throughout your career?
Well, at the very beginning, I grew up with the idea that I was going to be a football player. I wanted to play football more than anything. I love it more than anything. It's the only thing I call a real sport, you might say. Um, a friend of mine that used to play street football with us, who lived across the street from me, was talking one day about how he was in drama class and he did a play and all this stuff, and he just seemed to be absolutely uh, possessed by the magic of it. And I thought, I've got to try that. And so in junior high school, we called it junior high school then. Now it's middle school. But back in junior high school, I took a speech class and then a drama class. And as painfully shy as I was, and I would practically hide when I was anywhere else, even though I was just petrified many times to be in public, something about being on stage drew me. Coming to LA and doing a lot of stage and having been involved in some on-camera work and things like that, someone heard my voice and knew also about the accents and dialects, which are a specialty of mine as a stage actor, and said, why don't you come in and audition for this project I have going? I would dearly love to have you at least get an audition and meet some of these people. This was in '85 with Robotech, which ended up being my first series. And to this day, 35 years later, I'm still working with many of the same people from that time. Richard Epcar, Steve Kramer, Wendy Lee was in that. I believe Barbara Goodson also. Many of the actors that I still see and work with this very day. So I was drawn from the stage into overall the acting part, and having the voice I do and having the ear for sound that I do, I was kind of brought in by uh, others based on what they needed at that time. It turned out, and this I'm not bragging, it turned out that I'm good at it. Okay. I had no idea. I never thought about it, never did any workshops. I just came in and I have the eye lip, eye mouth coordination. I've got a good ear. I spot things. My acting instincts, and that's gigantic, um, are very sharp, especially when I get behind a microphone.
Now, um, when it comes to when you do different shows with when you're doing voice acting, how do you go from all of these different voices that you create for each of these characters? How do you change from voice to make it the way it is for each of these characters?
That's an excellent thing to talk about because, for instance, yesterday, again, something I can't tell you about, but I was on a project where they brought me in for my principal character. And we did I don't know how many cues exactly, but they gave me a script about 30 pages long, and there would be 2 or 3 pages in a row without me on them. But we would skip to my part. And then at the end, they said, okay, we have 2 other characters to pick up. You need to be able to just, as I put it when I do panels, you need to have these in your front pocket. So you have different voices and accents, dialects in your front pocket, you're ready to go. What you have to do is shake what you were just doing. Um, hopefully you're given a hopefully you're given a little bit of a background about the character, and so you can sort of loop into what that character is about. Uh, Now, as far as the voice goes, they will tell you what they want on the spot, but other times they won't. They'll just say, come up with something. And so yesterday, for instance, the first thing I did beyond my regular character was a tour guide. And so they asked, well, could you do something that sounded more like singing? Um, so fine. I look at the lines and it's not lyrics. It's not some kind of musical production of any kind. So I just went ahead, and I used to sing opera. So I went ahead into my singing voice, my baritone voice, and just kind of played around with it a little bit. And they liked it because it made it funnier. It gave it some more character. So I had something to draw upon based on what they were asking me. Um, the character after that, I can't remember what he was, a salesman or something like that. They wanted yet another different voice, and it has to be very different from the other two that I did. So you need to draw upon a lot of practice, a lot of work, um, and your own experience and your own confidence. You need to be able to have them hand something to you and say, all right, I can come up with this. I have a lot of different choices. So switching back and forth and round and stuff like that presents a lot of different challenges, but they're also fun. And when it pays off like it did in yesterday's session, always makes you feel good.
Now, um, one thing I do want to ask you when it comes to business is, um, now you do a lot of like anime shows, a lot of I don't know if there's a technical word for it, but like anime video games sort of thing. Um,
I
what
know
is
what you
it?
mean, and yeah, there's probably not a technical term for it yet. So
I wasn't sure. But what is it particular that draw you to that sort of genre, that sort of business in terms of anime and that sort of thing?
well, the money, of course, but um, I like to speak in terms of as an actor creatively, what is on the table and what is put before me. The business is the business. You make a lot of money or you make a little or whatever. That's all stuff that happens later, or you negotiate everything first, whatever. But when it comes to stepping into the booth or stepping on stage or in front of a camera, um, there's still that magic, that creative magic that I felt way back when I was playing street football with my neighbor across the street. Something brings me to it. And as one of my directors said when I was doing Nevada Shakespeare Festival, he said, through most of the rehearsal process, you're not good. You're stumbling around and trying to find things. And sometimes you're downright awful. He said, for some reason, you get in front of an audience and you just come alive. And this guy's been around. He's worked with a lot of actors in different parts of the world, different parts of America on Broadway stage and stuff like that. And he said, I've never seen anything like it. There is that kind of magic that makes me completely forget everything else. Um, I once did a 12-hour session right after I'd just gotten into a traffic accident. I went into the studio, and this was an accident on the way there. My car was still drivable. I got there. But for 12 hours, I put everything out of my mind except the work. Some people call that escapism, and in a way, they're right. Um, when I go home, and like yesterday, I had maybe about a 30-minute drive home, maybe a little bit less. It wasn't until 10 minutes before I got home I remembered, oh yeah, I got to go to the pharmacy. It took a long time for the real world to get back into my mind. And if you've ever heard of a runner's high, I have an acting high. When I get into that zone, I am fired up. And that's part of what feeds me also. It doesn't feel like a hassle. I don't go like, I've seen some performers, especially older performers that are on camera. They kind of go in and it's like, oh, here we go again, or how long is this going to take, etc. I'm ecstatic to be there. As I'm fond of saying, I'm 3 feet off the ground whenever I'm working, because I know down to the marrow of my bones, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. There's no other place. There's no doubt in my mind I'm exactly the place I need to be. If it's on stage in the middle of a windstorm in Nevada, or on camera shooting a scene at 2 o'clock in the morning as a homeless man in downtown LA, or getting behind a microphone and being a monster, you know, or being you know, a, a snotty little guy like Sorbet in Dragon Ball Super. That's where I'm supposed to be. So I'm always, always happy and feeling very energetic, because there is no other place for me. That's where I'm supposed to be. It's when I come back home and have to dump the trash and do the dishes and all that. Okay, then real life intrudes. But for that period of time, I am in the zone where I should be. That's where I belong. That's why I'm on the planet. That's the way I feel about it.
So it's definitely more of a career for you than a job, it seems.
Well, absolutely. There are times, of course, and I think any actor will tell you this, there are times when it feels like work.
Hmm.
If you've ever been in a 5-hour tech rehearsal, even on an Actors Equity Association, as we say, a union real job like that, it can be excruciating. You might be wearing heavy costumes. Um, you might already be tired as all get out. Typically, this is at the end of a day and into the evening. And they're setting lights and they're setting sound levels and they're doing all these things. Or the guys standing around. You need to go and stand center stage and do nothing because they're setting the lights now. Now they need to run a sound cue where you're walking off stage. And they didn't get it right, so you have to go back on stage and walk off again. Um, you are just a little pawn being moved around like that. So times like that, it does feel like work. But you know what? Deep inside, I'm still saying, I'm working. I'm an actor and I'm working. As I say in my panels, every time I step in front of the microphone, I remember there are 50,000 unemployed actors standing in line right behind me, and every one of them wants to step up where I am. So not that I feel grateful and lucky or anything like that, because I think you get work because you're good at what you do, not just because you have luck. But I do feel very, very blessed in the sense that I am in a situation where I can do that. I am the guy they picked, not someone else. And so while we will say we got work, I feel like I got play.
Well, I do have to agree with you on the fact that I can definitely say tech rehearsals are one of the worst things I've ever had to do with
Mhm.
being there for all day long. Those things aren't very fun.
No, I was in an episode of Last Man Standing a few years ago, and got there very early in the morning, costume, all that stuff, get makeup, do all the stuff we had to do. And they shoot live at night. So you have a very, very early call and you know you're going to be there until whenever they finish, whenever they call the wrap at the end of the night. Then you fill out your paperwork and you leave. Um, Even then, I'm around my fellow actors and I'm in a creative situation, so it's feeding me. That's why I have so much energy and I last longer than a lot of people that are 1/3 my age. I used to say 1/2. Now I have more numbers to work with.
Um, One other thing I want to ask you about is so not only do you just you do acting, but now I've noticed there's videos online of you doing teaching for acting. Um, Now, how did you get involved with that inside to the teaching side of things?
Well, all of the things I know about on Facebook, etc., are when I'm doing panels, some of my voice panels. And people, unbeknownst to me, sitting in the back and turning on their little cameras and watching me and recording me. Uh, I don't necessarily say don't do that, um, but I've been told by a lot of people, among them many of my fellow actors whom I respect greatly, uh, saying there are things I'm saying up there when I'm talking about how I create the voices in a very teaching manner, that they're blown away by it. And so I don't like the idea necessarily giving away as Richard Epcar once said, the keys to the kingdom. In fact, I was teaching a long time ago. A strange thing about me is I hated school. Um, it's bizarre when you look at my library and how much research I do and the knowledge I have of history and Native Americans and linguistics and stuff like that. I absolutely hated school. Never went to college, had no intention of ever doing that. But everyone who ever taught me said, wow, you're good at this. Why don't you come teach with me? And I kind of look around expecting to get busted because, again, I've never been to college, let alone gotten a teaching credential. So my very first teaching job outside of working with a couple of private speech students, I was on the grounds of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. For a guy who's never taught before in a big institution, that was a heck of a big start. Um, and same thing there. The instructor said, wow, why don't you, and someone who knew me from there asked me to teach at Los Angeles Broadcasting School. So I was on the staff there as a speech teacher. I've also taught at the American Academy. Well, talk about the American Academy. I've already done that. Sorry. San Diego State University, Cal State University, Los Angeles, various theater companies around Los Angeles. Again, just as I got into voiceover without doing any sort of workshops, I happen to be good at it. It turns out I'm a good teacher. It amazes me because I hated school so much. That's the furthest thing from my mind was ever to become a teacher. But each time I learn something, everyone is impressed by the way I use what I use. And then that gets me to thinking, how do I do that? That's why when you see me in panels, I will be describing to people how I create voices. So my work as a teacher, for instance, working with someone on a dialect, okay? And if the sound is, for instance, if I was doing a German accent, and that sound of goes so the word German is German. And so I would have to come up with a way of explaining that to a student that couldn't get it. And that's where you got stretched up here. And as an actor, you grew because you had to learn how to teach what you knew how to do. Not everyone can do that, again, purely by accident, because I never wanted to do this. But it came up to me, and I was teaching someone, and I said, chairman, and I said, think of the word chairman, but change the R. And chairman is what came out. And when you say chairman in a German accent, that is what you're saying. So it is a German accent. I just came up with equivalents and parallels and things like that off the top of my head. Later on, again, I walk away going like, I'm going to get in so much trouble. Because the big stink, as we all hear about in this country regarding teaching, and it's so controversial, and teachers are overpaid, etc., and they're not doing a good job. I disagree with all of that as a teacher, but also as a human being. I keep thinking, well, how could I possibly go out and teach anyone? I don't have a credential. I haven't had my 4 years and gotten my bachelor's or anything like that. And I was speaking to a fellow actor who happened to have his master's. And he said, well, Paul, don't let it bother you. He said, remember that a BS is exactly that. He says an MS is more of the same. And a PhD means it's piled higher and deeper. I'd never heard that stuff before, but he explained all of it to me. He said, most teachers will tell you that too. He said, the fact is you know how to do this and you're doing a good job for them, so just do that. And so I quit looking over my shoulder, for the credential police after that. But also I just kind of made it easier on myself. If anyone asks, I am a guest instructor. That's all I'll say. I don't know. Maybe there's such a thing as credential police. I don't know.
So you were able to teach at all these places, and you never they never required you to have any sort of credential.
Well, they either never asked, or in the case like, for instance, Cal State LA, I met the director of the productions I did there, and I've done 2 there as their instructor for accent, speech, dialects, and whatnot. I met him through Native Voices at the Autry. The Autry Museum has a theater company, and it is Native American. Playwrights, actors, directors, so on and so forth. And I was brought in for a production to coach some of the younger actors especially. They haven't had the stage training. They don't have a lot of the refinements that come with that very, very disciplined style of acting. And so I go in there as an elder, you might say, because I'm older, and stand them up and say, okay, everybody do this, do this, do this, and then give them speech tips as they're rehearsing and so on. So the instructor, I should say the director there, Jose Cruz Gonzalez, is also a professor at Cal State Los Angeles. And he asked me to come in and coach their one act festival. So I believe, if I recall correctly, it was 4 plays. And again, college actors, not a lot of technical training, at least at that point. So I would give them notes and talk with them about what they needed to do, direct someone and say, look, you just said the word pound but I didn't get the D. Okay, now that is called a terminal. You have to do your terminals. And I tell the director that I'm going to instruct the actors, terminals, terminals, terminals. So when the word is red, for instance, and I hear the actor on stage say re, I'm saying re what? If I'm not hearing it, neither is the audience, because I have a sharp ear and probably they don't. So those are the things that come from one job to another based on my expertise as an actor who's had this training. I did not go to school and become a speech teacher and arrive at it that way. In a way, I'm very, very fortunate. I've been trained by actors who are Shakespearean actors from England, actors that have taught around the world, and I was soaking up all this wonderful stuff I got from them. And so as a speech technician, as I refer to myself, I do bring a lot to the table, and I like to be able to tell the actors, based on my experience, my results, having done tons of Shakespeare, other stage plays when I was in LA, and then I was still in LA, but in San Diego at the Old Globe Theater. These are things that you can bring as a actor, as a person who's been around. And I tell them, look, this will be important to you now in this production and going forward. Work on it now, get the experience. Plus the company's paying me, you're not, so soak it all up as much as you can.
Well, and another thing I do want to ask you is, now you've done work on stage, in front of like audiences and like um, what's the word, like live action, and
Yes.
you've also done now voice acting. What's the difference when it comes to when you're working on both of those, like when it comes to acting for that? What are the main differences for you when it comes to preparation and going and doing the job?
Well, I have a panel that I call from stage actor to voice actor. And I describe to people my background. I was not, 12, 13 years old and saying, hey, someday I'm going to be doing anime, or I'm going to be the narrator on such and such a production. Like, if you know Soul Calibur 5 and Soul Calibur 6, I'm the narrator on those. I never looked at a young age and said, that's what I'll be doing, One thing just leads to another as a performer. I try to explain to people that my background as a stage actor really was the epitome of what I was looking to do with my life and my career. And as I like to explain to them, you get to use your whole body and props and an entire stage, and you get to interact with someone standing next to you or standing on the top of the stairs upstage of you or something like that. Or you look out over the audience and are doing something called a duologue or a monologue. There's something to work with. The difference then is you need to take all of that grounding and all of that craft and bring it to life to a space about that big. Because that's the little sound tunnel. That's a way I like to describe it. The sound tunnel you have in front of that microphone. What I'm doing right now is essentially the voiceover technique. You don't see me doing this and jumping around, etc. And I try to explain to people, if you as an actor want to do all those physical movements, you're going to drive your engineer crazy, because the sound is going to be up, down, side, all over the place. I said they won't be able to set your levels, and you won't go back to work again. All right. So you need to be able to bring the passion, the training, all of the grounding, as I like to put it, everything you ever learned as a stage performer to that microphone. It's a wonderful compliment to hear someone talk about my work in a voice job and they describe the feelings that they got, what they experienced emotionally based on what I was doing vocally. That's what I talk about. It is acting. People who say, well, how hard could it be? I always laugh and say, try it sometime. It's one of the most difficult styles of acting I've ever touched. You simply have to bring so much and you don't get to jump. I've done, I forget how many plays in the canon, but probably about 12 Shakespearean productions. I don't get to draw a sword. behind the microphone. I don't get to lift a crown or put it back on my head. I don't get to pick something up and eat it, uh, or drink something. All of this has to be done with your voice. Um, the prep that I go through to really address the meat of your question is I remember as an actor that it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. As an actor, you're still responsible for creating that character. So I have to remember the background. I need to learn as much as I can about that person and what is important to them. Take that and figure out what is important within this story. Where's the playwright or the writer leading you? What is your relationship with the other individuals? As other actors have probably told you, we work alone. So I might be having a dialogue scene with another actor on camera, for us on camera, in other words, the anime that you see on screen. So you're looking at the picture and these two are talking to each other. We don't get to do that. We are alone in the booth. So when we make it sound, we're talking to each other and we make it sound like we're listening and taking into account each other's wants and needs, etc. These are all things we did solo. It's very, very difficult to do that sort of thing. If you are grounded in your character and the director and the producer and maybe even the engineer have given you a lot of good background, you can do it. You can make all of those things seem very, very real. As far as the hard work you do as a young actor, grounding yourself, and then the difficulty of going through real life, where the reason you're sad in this scene is something you can draw on a reason that you were sad a year ago or 5 years ago or something like that. Experiencing loss, experiencing joy, things like that. There are things that you get where you get to a certain point where you say that actor has the chops. Okay, they're technically trained, but they also have the oomph underneath for it. You know?
Well, now, sorry, I I was just a little shocked. The oomph did sound like Xemnas there for a minute. I was a bit shook.
Well, in fact, I don't think Xemnas has ever said oomph. But for you, Matthew, my minion and friend, I will say it again. Oomph. So that's something new. I've never done that before.
Well, that's a good soundbite.
Yeah.
Well, now that it's been mentioned, I guess we'll get into some of the Kingdom Hearts contacts and questions. Um, well, my first question with that is, how did you first get involved with the series? Back in when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out and everything back then, how did it all get started?
Well, strange story for me. I got the audition by accident. I don't know if you know Cowboy Bebop.
I think I've heard of it. I'm not entirely sure what it is.
Oh yeah, well, it's I don't want to say it's a cult series, but it has a very solid uh, high number group, shall we call them, that are into the show. There's one character in there whose name is Vicious, and I was contacted by the director to audition for Kingdom Hearts, and he said the client wants you to do the same voice that you did for Vicious in Cowboy Bebop. Now, my character in Cowboy Bebop was Punch, and believe me, it's not even remotely resembling the voice I use as Xemnas. And I didn't remember playing Vicious, and you tend to remember name characters like that. You know, third salesman from the left in a marketplace, you don't remember that guy or the voice. But if you have a character like Vicious, you remember. I did a game where my character's name was Death Panda. Okay, so you remember Death Panda, you remember Vicious. You don't remember, Samurai at the gate who says halt. That was it. But I thought, well, we do so many things. It could be that I played a character called Vicious and I just don't remember. I went in, and by the strangest coincidence in my career ever, I did almost to a T the voice that the actor did as Vicious in Cowboy Bebop. I listened to it later. I was watching, and along comes the character of Vicious, and I'm listening, and I went like, "Oh my heavens, that's almost identical to the voice I used for Xemnas." I did not hear it. I didn't even try. So they cast me. The powers that be at Disney, Square Enix, whoever was involved at the time. And the director contacted me later and said, well, I listened to the series. That wasn't you as Vicious, but they picked you anyway. So, okay. So again, an audition by accident. And, what is it, 15 years later, I guess. Here we are. That was where that all came from. Now, the actual voice I use as Xemnas is along the same lines as the one that the actor used as Vicious. The delivery is all mine because I don't know why, but almost everything in the original Japanese is underwritten for the timing. And so, in fact, my delivery is Xemnas. They had me slow everything down. And so that voice became, in a sense, my own creation because the pacing, the sound, and what I like to call as a Shakespearean actor, the word tasting, are all my own. And they had to come about because, as I like to explain, there's a cue that is this long and it's written only this long. So you need to make sure that each sound that you do covers the entire wave. And they loved it. I said, okay, I thought it was kind of crappy myself, but if they like it. And so it's become iconic. It's a sound that I have that grew completely out of an accident.
So the reason why Xemnas talks so slow is because of how it was
It's a
animated
purely
with the
it's a purely technical uh,
happy
adjustment.
accident.
Well, a happy accident, but it's a technical adjustment. Um, for instance, he won't try that. Okay. Now, one of my ideas, and I do this on a regular basis in other uh, projects. If the line is a little bit short and the timing is a little bit longer, I would say he will not do that. I'll take out the contraction, and then it fits. And such is the regard I have from other artists with whom I work. They will actually say, "Oh, good, yes, let's keep that in." Many times I will ask them because I can look on the page. I know Epcar is very, very good at this sort of thing too. He will look at the line, he will look at the timing, he will know if it's underwritten or overwritten. If it's underwritten and we have a chance to do something to make the line go a little bit longer, we will make the adjustment. Wendy Lee does that too. She spots that immediately. She'll say, and that's one way to do it. Now, unfortunately for Xemnas, the timing was so long and the lines were so short, it didn't matter if I uncontracted the words. I still had to just draw everything out, which is why I tell people I have the longest K and B and G and T and D sounds in the industry. Because it doesn't become bake, it's bake. So you have to fill the time out. After we did our first session on the game way back when, I went home and they had already scheduled me for another 4 hours on another time. And I thought, boy, when I get back, they are going to be so angry with the result. We're going to have to restart everything. I walked into the session. They said, okay, they loved everything, so let's keep going. I went, okay. There's something called keep the client happy that kicks in at that moment. So yes, a technical adjustment based on a happy accident, that would be one way of describing the results I get as Xemnas and using the voice that I do. And again, the acting, you have to connect to the character. You can't just say the words because people that think what I do is some easy thing, well, just step in front of the mic and talk. No. If you don't bring the oomph to it, if you don't bring the guts, if you don't bring the imagination, the passion and the pain and the whatever to the character, the listener will know it. People that follow the animes that we do will know it. One thing I love about meeting the attendees at conventions, as the years go by and they watch more and more anime, they become much more sophisticated. And they will ask me, what happened to such and such a character? They changed. And I said, aha. And sometimes producers out there might be saying, oh, they're not listening. We can change the character. We can just bring a different actor in there. No, it gets noticed. We don't take the brunt of it in a convention, but we are asked about it. What happened? Why did you change the voice? Why did they change the voice? So it's one of those things where you really need to be able to bring all of that stuff and connect with the character. Again, it has to be grounded in acting. Some of the most moving things that I've ever heard from an attendee happen when the person says, you delivered that in such a way, or they won't even say delivered, but you spoke or said that in such a way that just really, stirred my heart. It's because we are bringing the human being through that. I mean, even if it is a three-eyed monster with, horns and stuff like that, if it's written in such a way that there's supposed to be a humanity, a feeling, some kind of passion underneath it, or pathos for that matter, then you need to bring that. You have to. It is a style of acting.
Now, you mentioned tugging at the heartstrings. Um, now, Xemnas is a character with, he's not supposed to have emotions or feelings, but there was his, I don't know, again, I don't know if there's a technical term for it, but I'll just say his death monologue from Kingdom Hearts 3, where he talks about being lonely. And I know a lot of people that tugged at their heartstrings. On the internet, there's people that shed tears at that actually felt something from that. And I can say the same. It was definitely a sad scene. How much work went into that one, minute and a half long scene to craft exactly what that was?
Well, you as an actor need to have your wear your emotions on your sleeve, is the one way to put it. You have to be ready. I mean, I can cry at the drop of a hat. Okay, at least physically, these things are happening with me. I'm a little choked up, and the eyes are welling up, and that sort of thing. Um, the old thing, as I mentioned before, as you age and you go through life and you start experiencing many things, many of them are sad. And if you allow yourself to keep those things close to the surface, they are available to you as an actor if you're ready for that sort of thing. Looking at the dialogue, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful writing for this. You could tell, not from the heart, as we would say, for Xemnas, but something that intrigued his mind and tormented him. So the beginnings of a heart, or something in there, someone has to have a heart to have a sense of humor. So whatever is within a nobody, within a member of Organization 13, so on and so forth, that don't have hearts, there's something in there that makes them smile and makes them laugh. That's the mind, and the mind has some way of connecting to pain and anguish. Then you as an actor need to connect with that. The writing led me right to it. It was really easy in that sense. I didn't have to manufacture context. It was put down there in front of me. One of my favorite stories, after one of my followers on Twitter she didn't tell me before she finished, she said this afterwards. She said, if you had told me 2 weeks ago that I would finish Kingdom Hearts crying, I would have laughed at you. She said, well, I just finished the game. Thank you very much for making me a sobbing mess. Now, if you watch that again, there's a look that comes across, say, my face. My face is Xemnas. When I turn away from the other character, and there's a look of pain and suffering in my eyes. All of that was brought out again there for you to see by the animators, quote unquote. Okay. So it was in the picture for you guys, it was in the writing for me. My challenge as the actor is to bring that to life. Again, it's a joy when the writing is good, to be able to do good material. What I worked on yesterday for this other project, I can't talk about it. Ladybug. You didn't hear that. And that might have fried your microphone. I don't know. But there are things in there that really do connect with the emotions that people will feel within the story. And so in that sense, I'm connecting with the members of the audience. It can only be uh, heartrending for people playing the game to see what it is like to be a nobody. Why are we like that? Why? How could we be like that? And then at the end, you know, when one of the lines was, it must take incredible strength to be human. You know, just the wonder in that. Xemnas just can't figure it out, but it's perplexing him, and that's the beginning of what looks like emotion for him. Unfortunately, then the game's over. He goes away. You know, um, uh, that for me again, because the writing was good, it was easier for me to connect, and I work with very good directors and engineers, and they are right there for you. If you are going to get quiet by 12% lower than what you were doing before, they're ready. And if they say, give it a try first, I will do it the way I want to, and either move in on the microphone or stay where I am and drop my volume. They will adjust, they will pick up the performance, and the director knows what to do with it. The director and an engineer working together as a team, that's what makes us.
Now, another thing I do want to ask you is, well, this is just a little small thing with that monologue, but I wondered when you were when you were delivering that, there was like little shivers and little like noises you made. Like how did you get that precise with that sort of parts of the speech? Whenever I re-listen to it, that those parts just make like goosebumps when you do that. The shiver. How did you just come up with that? How did you come up with that?
Well, sometimes the quiver in the voice has to do with the emotion you're feeling. Um, and maybe the next time you do it, you don't feel it, which is why you might hear something different. You guys get the final result, the ones that the client, wherever they might be. Yesterday, I was speaking to people in New York and Paris. Um, so they're listening and they're choosing what they like. Um, for me, since I had no control over that anyway, the thing I can do is control my performance. That's my responsibility at all times. When I have a part in there where it seems like um, artistically and creatively, I see a reason for a pause. Okay. As a technician of speech, I find a way to make that work so that everybody understands me. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. The result from that is the emotion and the performance. I've got the guts behind it. I've got what's going on. Um, I have done roles where I was in the booth and I was crying my eyes out. It's just one of those things where you connect with the character. And if they're crying, and again, the writing is good, and I've dubbed other series that are done in other countries. And so there's an actor in another language, but it's just, oh, this amazing stuff is going on with him. I connect with that too in my own language. When you have something like, for instance, a very, really almost gut wrenching finish, like with Xemnas in this particular case, because the writing was good, I was able to just use everything I had to work with there. Um, much of what makes it a little bit easier for me is because, again, the timing. They give you lots and lots of time because the Japanese lines are short and the timing they want is really long. So when they said, you have lots of time, take it. And I, as an actor, especially as a stage actor, when they say you have lots of time on stage, oh, we are just going to use it. In that sense, we're in a very good-natured way, quite vain.
Now, when it comes to not it doesn't just have to be for Xemnas, but for any character that you voice. When it comes to the script, when you look at the script, do you have any like involvement with that? Like, or do you ever like give any pitch on if you think something should be changed, if you don't think it fits the character that you're voicing, if you think there should be something altered? You ever have like a say on that, or do you usually just take the script and deliver it as is?
Well, I've never been involved in the writing end of it. I get the finished product put in front of me. That doesn't mean it's flawless. It doesn't mean that I don't see things that I would like to either change, add, or something like that. When I mentioned earlier, a simple technical thing like uncontracting something, okay? So cannot can be very strong instead of can't, all right? Uh, so if you're just messing around with the words and structure and things like that, sometimes it's grammatically incorrect. And I will say, I'm going to fix this here. I say this before we go. I read through the line and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and fix this because sometimes something needs to be singular and they made it plural. So and I was terrible at English in school, but because I read so much and I'm exposed to the language so much, I've kind of learned by osmosis how to correct many of those things. So I will fix something along those lines. When it comes to the creative side, what I think would work better in terms of a line of dialogue, I do gauge the client with whom I'm working. If it's somebody I don't know, the engineer I don't know, the director I don't know, I'm very reluctant to sort of point these things out. Sometimes I'm sneaky. I'll just change it in the performance, and they either don't know or didn't notice, or I will say afterwards, oh, this didn't work grammatically. That's why I did it like that. So it sounded different. And you see, I did it in such a way that it even fit the timing, so they would never have noticed. But I will point that out just as a little primer for what's going to happen later on, so that if they feel comfortable asking me for my guidance as the language guy that I am, they will. You will run into people sometimes that they wrote that script, that's their baby. I don't want to touch it, and I'm very reluctant to do that with someone I do not know. I will simply point out something as necessary. We had a situation yesterday where they had just basically reversed 2 words. Okay. So I had a chance to look at the line and I said, oh, when I get there, let me. And so I fixed it and it worked. It flowed a lot better. And after that, I told them, oh, I did this here because of the grammatical blah, 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 stuff like that. So they were saying, oh, yes, okay, thanks. Other times they'll say, well, I did it that way because, and I can't know that because I don't know the whole story. I'm only there for my part. So I get it, and then I'll make it work. That's my job. I have to make it work.
Now, another question I want to ask you is um, with like the Kingdom Hearts series, how when since you've been involved with it, how much have you been involved with, say, like not just being the voice actor, but like, the lore of it, like the interacting with the fan base, playing maybe playing the video game series. Like, do you do more than just be part as a voice actor? Do you get involved with the game in different senses as well?
Well, mostly through doing panels at conventions. People will ask me questions. Um, we like to explain this, and we do say it over and over again, as actors working on a series, actors working on a game, and in this case, a game franchise and more than one thing. We don't get the whole story at the beginning. We go in and we do what we do. In an animated series, for that matter, I go in and I have 2 hours. This is my 2-hour session. And they say, okay, brand new show here. In this universe, puppies ride dragons and cockroaches do your taxes. And you are a magic user. You can't find your shoes. 1, 2, 3, go, act. They just don't have time to give you the whole story. And it's not like in the theater where the actors all sit around at a table and you have a read through and you don't get a chance to discuss any of this. And it's not through any fault of the director or the producer or anyone. We just don't have time. So when I go in, they say, okay, this is your character. Here's how you fit in. And now here's what's happening with the scene. On your mark, set, act. With Kingdom Hearts, again, I have absolutely no input regarding the original content. And it is coming from another country. It's put in our lap in its basic form. The translation is handed to us, and then I, as an actor, have to make all that stuff work. and collaborate with the director, the producer, two people in Tokyo, one person in New York, somebody in Mexico City, heaven knows what. My input as far as that goes, and I like to describe it when I do panels and people ask me questions, I will never say this, my character would never say that. I'm not a writer. I have the utmost respect for writers because they do something that I consider to be excruciatingly difficult. So I'm not going to criticize what their writing is about. I'm not going to tell them, oh, I don't think this works in my character this. I know my character better than you do. You know, I'm not going to do anything like that. What I will do as far as my input on the character is what I mentioned earlier in terms of changing a line to make it sound better, coming up with a word to use here instead of the one they wrote because it'll flow better. Sometimes we're trying to find a way to make the line work better. So all of us are going, shouldn't he say, no, wait, that doesn't work. And you go ahead and you run things through like that. That's where I do have some input in what you might call a rewrite. Sadly, and again, there's no time for this, but sadly, I don't get to sit down with the writers and mull through the lines and say, okay, I would do it better this way, it would flow better that way. As a speaker, as a person who has worked in radio and on television, on stage, and definitely behind the mic, my input as a speech technician, as someone who knows the sounds and how to make them, etc., and how to change the voices, etc., it would be useful for me to be able to do that. But you get to a point of collaboration like that where you just, you know, I can't go to Japan when they're working on this stuff and in the middle of Tokyo and say, yes, Paulson is going to be coming in here and we're going to have 3 days with him. You know, that stuff just doesn't happen, you know. I wish, you know.
Well, now you mentioned when you're in the booth, you don't interact with the other actors when you're delivering your lines. Now, have you ever had interaction with the fellow actors in the show, like maybe not in the booth, but throughout the production of whether it's the video game or a show? Um, do you interact with them, or is it just you go to your booth and then you see the finalized product and you're like, oh, he was there, he was there? Or
Well, that's one of our jokes. We normally don't find out who else the other actors are if we don't recognize the name, unless they're leaving the booth and you're walking in, or vice versa. Oh, I didn't know you're on this show. Yeah, great. See you later. And then you go and you do your session, and then the next actor comes in. As far as seeing each other socially, yeah, there are times we can talk and, you know, do that. But as far as any sort of meaningful interaction in the way the show is going and can we do anything about it, or they will give us a moment to talk things through. I've never had that happen. I did do a game called XCOM, when I played Dr. Heinrich, rocket scientist, and I got to be in the booth with all of the other actors for all of my scenes, and it was a joy. We had the scripts, we got to rehearse, we got to make eye contact. You were acting with other people. One of the unfortunate parts, again, of working solo in the booth is in a way you're acting with phantoms. I know the actor said this, that's what the other actor's line is, and I'm responding in such and such a way. I'm going to give it my own twist, you know, or I'm going to bring myself to it or bring something to my character that maybe they hadn't thought about. But you don't get to have that interaction. If I have a scene with Richard Epcar in Kingdom Hearts, we didn't get to do it together. It was separate from each other. They put it together and we sound like we're talking to each other. When I did XCOM, I got to go in, I think, 3 times, and I was working with the other actors on these scenes, and you could just feel the electricity of it. That being able to feed off of each other, there's nothing like it. It was, in a way, like being live on stage. That was terrific. Sadly, again, I don't get that opportunity to walk in there and have them say, all right, look, this is how we see Xemnas in this particular case. Or back in the day when we were doing Digimon. They said, we thought Wormmon should be saying this. What do you think? Okay, that simply doesn't happen. There's no time, there's no budget. one of our kind of bitter jokes when it comes to doing especially episodic anime is that they take forever to give us the episodes, and then they complain that we don't have them done already. So we wanted this done yesterday. I got it at 10 o'clock this morning. It's that bad sometimes, you know.
Um, Another thing I've always wanted to ask you was, particularly in Kingdom Hearts, there's a few memes, if you will, about Xemnas. Two of which that I can think of right now are Milky Cow Man and Mansex. Now, I do just want to know, like, how much, like, do you hear these often? Are these just things that, like, you don't really know about, or do you know about all these different memes and things that go about with Xemnas, like, you know, like the Milky Cow Man and Mansex?
Milky Cow Man, the only thing I ever heard about that was that cowhide outfit that I wear. Um,
Yeah,
it's
and
supposed
with
yeah,
the
I can't remember exactly where that first came in because I saw it on some fan art.
mm,
Somebody else said, "Oh, we call that the cowhide." So I don't I don't know that much about that. Mansex, yeah, I heard about that at a panel, and it was just a Q&A, and somebody said, "Are you bothered that everybody's calling you Mansex?" And I said, "They're calling me what?" Because I had never heard it. So yeah, when you take the letters of Xemnas and move it around, you get Mansex. I went, okay, I've never heard of that, but no, it doesn't bother me. Of course, I made it my own. Everywhere I go now and do conventions, I always have everybody chant, man, sex, man, sex, man, sex. So I have stories about how I told, there are uh, 4 conventions I've done in Australia, and they didn't know anything about that. So I brought that bizarre chant to the people of Australia. So now whenever I go, where every place I go, if they know me already, I'm greeted with man, sex, man, sex.
well, um, well, I do want to ask you now that Xemnas is dead again. Is there any involvement you'll have in the future of the franchise, or is this the end, or what's the next step?
Well, certainly that's not something I can control. I did tell Nomura-san uh, by way of Twitter. I don't know him, but I told him on by way of Twitter. I said, Nomura-san, Kingdom Hearts 4, Xemnas is ready. You know. Now, as you know, with things like Dream Drop Distance and 358-2, there are parallel stories and sometimes side stories and bizarre offshoots. Who knows? They may come up with a prequel. They may come up with some supporting material. I certainly hope they do. I love playing the character, and I think uh, everyone in Organization 13 brings a certain bizarre darkness to the entire storyline. Um, I love all of the things that have been incorporated, like Pirates of the Caribbean, um, story stuff like that. I like all the different directions it goes in.
I think
But
you're cutting out a little bit.
there's thing I can't honestly say there's a. I'm still here.
Yep.
You froze for a moment.
Oh, you froze on my end. I think. Are we good now? I think we're good.
Mine says my internet connection is unstable. Let me check because
I can hear you now. You look like you're doing good now.
okay, yeah. No, it says I'm still up, connected and secured. Okay. Um, yeah, for a moment. Anyway, as what I was saying there, um, the element that Organization 13 brings to the overall story, I think, has a lot of guts to it, and so it would fit in very nicely. I'm absolutely ready. They want to bring Xemnas back in any way, shape, or form. I'm ready to go. I'd be very happy to do it again. It's a sweet thing. Plus, I get to see the people that I've been working with for years, and that's wonderful. One of the individuals from the client is June. June's a great guy. I love to see him. We mess with each other all the time. You know, I make fun of his clothing. Um, although he dresses better than I do, but that's part of the fun, you see. I make fun of the way he dresses. So you get to reconnect and, get back and talk to people who maybe you haven't seen in years.
Well, I mean, I know, I'm sure plenty of members of the fan base hope that Xemnas can return such an iconic character with the lore and the voice and everything.
Mm,
It's such an iconic character.
yes. Oh, I would love to do it.
Um, Now I knew one thing that you mentioned yesterday was there was a couple of series that you're working on now that you wanted to speak about. Um, so I'll just ask you what those couple of series are.
Well, there are things I can't talk about regarding the non-disclosure agreement. Um,
Mhm.
so I can tell you there are things I will be doing as a voice actor on a live series, things that will be playing on Netflix. So watch for those. They're original French material, and we've dubbed them over into English. One that I did was called The Family Business. We're working on season 2. That's all I can tell you about. But I think you can find it on Netflix, and you'll hear me playing the part of Gerard. The other series, we haven't even aired any episodes yet, but also begun in France, but I can't say anything beyond that. Tomorrow, Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be on Instagram with a company called Streamily, and we're going to be doing live Q&A and autograph signings. So everybody pop on in if you can. That's a hashtag Paul St. Peter 1. So there I'll be, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Got my plug in, yay.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Well, I think that answered all the questions I have at the moment, but I do want to
Oh,
say
great.
thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That